Well, historically, mirrors have been used time and time again. Going back to the Dutch in I guess it was the 17th century, there was this artist that painted these two dukes or something, and he has this image that's on the floor that's just this sort of stretched out abstraction. And it was basically caused by a mirror. And if you photograph it just right, like from an angle, really obtusely, it turns into a perfectly normal skull. Screwing around with mirrors has been going on for a long time. When I was doing my perceptual thing, I was really being very analytical about what I was doing. And I just thought mirrors would confuse the whole issue and be kind of pointless. So mirrors are just totally baffling. I think they're actually kind of mystical. When I did the Rutland drawing, which is right in that room over there, I was drawing the window of, I believe it was a coffee exchange at the time. And in the window, there was a reflection of a railroad station sign, the little, yeah. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. I looked all over Rutland. I can't figure out where that sign came from, where that reflection came. I still can't find where that reflection came from. So mirrors are a totally enigma to me. I mean, when I was doing this, I still don't understand. I mean, it's all has to do with where your eye level is, the angle in which you look at the mirror. And I think, depending on the angle of the mirror, it can come at any, like a 45 degree, in any degree in between that and flat on the floor. So that's kind of what this is. This is, there's like 4 different angles in terms of how high the mirrors are. And so each one has, and again, nobody sees the same thing because it really depends on, if you're 6'4", your eyes are going to be higher than mine is at 5'7", or if you were 4'11", you would see a totally different thing because it's sort of like rainbows. I don't know if you know about rainbows. This is part of my notion about, everybody's perception is totally individual. So if you and I were standing right next to each other and we were observing a rainbow out on the horizon, because your horizon is different than my horizon because you're 2 or 3 inches taller, we would not see the rainbow. As a matter of fact, all rainbows that I see are my personal rainbows. Nobody else can see my rainbows. So that's what happens with mirrors, because of the angle and the reflection. When I look in these mirrors, you and I can be standing right next to each other and we will see different reflections. That's one of the reasons that I sort of enjoy mirrors. Now, I bought all of these mirrors because I had this other piece that I wanted to make, and I imagined that, and then I made a small model, and the model seemed to do what I thought it would do, and so I built a big one, and it was the room across the hall there, and there were vertical mirrors that were 8 feet tall that made 2 walls that were perpendicular to each other. And to compensate for the space, like there was the center of this thing where you would stand in the middle of this circle that I put on the floor, the mirrors had to be, each one had to be progressively smaller because the width of things, the further away from you they are, the wider they get. In order to look equal, they had to be like that. Then there were these angle pieces that all came straight out from those wall pieces that again were like this. So they all came into this circle. Well, the reason I did that is that 2 things happen. You stand in the middle of the circle and you look at the mirrors, and first you see your reflection in these mirrors that are standing up, just like you were looking into a mirror. Then all of a sudden your eyes, well, this doesn't happen for everybody. Some people can't do this. But all of a sudden your eyes, the depth of field of your eyes reaches beyond the surface of the mirrors. And all of a sudden you see the space that you're standing in, and you see yourself standing in a space that doesn't exist. And this happens on both of these walls that are like that. And so it's again, it's that whole, idiosyncrasy about nobody ever sees the same world because our brain produces it, you know, each one individually. They have this system in the brain that sorts out information, and that information produces an image, and everybody's image is absolutely their own. They're all idiosyncratic to each person, just like everybody's rainbow is his own. So that's what that was about. You're standing in the space and you see yourself in a space that doesn't exist. Now, the difference here is the difference between cognitive perception, which is totally different from the world that's actual, the physical world that's actual outside. As a matter of fact, this is where it gets fascinating. You can never see the actual world. You can only see the information that's processed in your default mode network that produces your own cognitive perception. You're totally cut off. But, you know, the brain is so good. We produce cognitive perceptions that are so actual or so real that you can't distinguish between your cognitive perception and the actual world that's out there that you can't see. I just find that so fascinating, which essentially means everybody makes up the world that they see in the process of producing cognitive perception. It's just so fascinating. I mentioned once before to you about this guy named Donald Hoffman. I really want to get in touch with him, but he's sort of a star. And stars, celebrities have a keeper of the gate that's virtually impossible to get past. But he's doing the same thing, but he's doing it, he's a scientist. He's he got his bachelor's degree at Berkeley in cognitive science, and then he got his masterate or his doctorate in computer whatever at MIT in Boston. And so he has created, it's more than anecdotal information. He has created on the computer, what do they call it, programs that basically sort of prove that everybody's perception is idiosyncratic. Now, you know, the most complicated object in the entire universe is sitting on your shoulders. I mean, there's more connections in your brain than there are stars in the universe. Your brain is so complex that it's very possible that your brain is totally unique in the universe, totally unique not only to the 7 or 8 billion people that are living on the planet, but their ancestors going all the back to when they were cave people. Absolutely unique, because it's so, since you have these totally complex, totally unique, you know, there's a trillion billion connectors in your brain. You know, it's just, there's something like 700 miles of capillaries in your brain. That's enough to get you from here past Washington, D.C., you know, if you were to line them all up straight. So yeah, of course we all see the world, you know, that we produce individually, and nobody sees the same. I'm sure you've had conversations where you're talking to somebody who you can't agree on what color you're looking at. My wife and I do this all the time. She said, no, that's gray. I said, no, it's not gray, it's blue. No, it's gray, it's blue. We just see different, obviously you see different colors. And, you know, that goes back to Matisse. He understood that nobody sees colors, they only see light reflecting off of objects. And the colors that you see is an experience that's totally exclusive and produced in your brain. He understood that colors were not indigenous to the actual world. Colors are, indigenous is a word my wife said I misused. It's actually a product of your brain producing the sensation of color. So, you know, and nobody, it's very possible nobody sees exactly the same color. And this includes, again, all 8 billion people on the planet. So, you know, mirrors are just so, yeah, when you say they're a metaphor, they are, because, again, everybody's because of the height of their eyes and the angle that they look at a mirror. No matter who comes in here and looks at it, they have a unique experience to all the other people who ever come in here and look at it. That's what I believe. And that's what Donald Hoffman believes too. So, me and a scientist, we are on the same page, but I can't convince them to pay any attention because everybody knows artists don't know anything. It's just the way the world is. So there you go. That's mirrors.